So NBA free agency started about a week ago from the time of this recording, and for some teams, this is a well-desired thing because this means that their season likely wasn't the best. And unfortunately for the Golden State Warriors, they fall under this category. A team that won the championship just 2 seasons ago and was on top of the NBA after difficulties getting back there has seen better days. If you have been keeping up with NBA free agency, there's obviously been some reconstruction with the team's roster that's filled with certainly bad moves, but also some good ones as well. So let's cover the Warriors free agency performance thus far. First things first, the elephant in the room, Klay Thompson, the starting shooting guard, one of the greatest shooters ever, 60 points in 3 quarters on 11 dribbles, 37 in a quarter, multiple Game 6 heroic performances, 4-time NBA champion, one half of the Splash Bros, is officially no longer a Golden State Warrior. Absolutely heartbreaking to hear, especially as a longtime diehard Warriors fan. To see one of the most important pieces of one of the greatest dynasties of all time slowly fall apart, not only with his capabilities on the basketball court, but also with the organization that he has represented for his entire career. It's no secret that Klay has had some rough years with the Warriors post-injury, but that's a given. This is something that needs to be addressed. It's so easy for us to forget as sports fans that this man went through 2 career-ending injuries, an ACL tear on the left knee and an Achilles tear on the right foot. So many great and promising players have fallen victim to these injuries, and it was extremely detrimental to their careers. So how can you expect someone like Klay to come back and become the same player that he once was? It's just impossible. Now with that being said, as far as the technical side of things, Klay has been underwhelming for the Warriors. His ability to provide as the second option for the Warriors has been very poor. He's having one of the worst shooting seasons of his career, shooting 38.7% behind the arc. His offensive limitations have been apparent since the injuries, and his defensive presence is pretty much non-existent. As a fan that has watched damn near every single game this season, I would be capping hard if I said it hadn't been a frustrating experience watching Klay Thompson play basketball. Like, there was a stretch during the season where this man couldn't even score 10 points as a starter. I wasn't pleased to see Klay operating as a starter on the team. I thought elite teams with elite defensive coverages gave Klay a ton of issues where he's trying to play hero ball. There were so many instances this season where Klay tried to create his own shot or just straight up forced a ton of bad shots, and in return, it would destroy the Warriors offense. He can't finish going to the basket, so he settles for contested mid-range jump shots that fall short. So instead, I wanted him to come off the bench, and he played much better against weaker opposition with less complicated coverages. The defense was what really pissed me off because Klay in his prime was one of the best two-way players in the league. Him being able to run off all those screens and be able to hit threes at an efficient rate and consistently guard the other team's 2 guard or point guard was huge. But now he can't even guard anyone in his position. If he's matched up with a pure slasher like Anthony Edwards, John Morant, De'Aaron Fox, he's going to get toasted 80% of the time. He can guard better in the post, but make no mistake about it, he's not going to do anything. I mean, there was literally a game last season where Harrison Barnes went off for 40. Yes, you heard that right. Harrison Barnes went off for 40 points and was straight up frying Klay Thompson in the mid post. And not to mention, his screen navigation is absolutely buns. That was one of the things that cost us in the play-in game where he infamously went 0 for 10 and he couldn't get around a screen to save his life. Keegan Murray got up like 13 3-point attempts because Klay couldn't guard his own archetype. He was never great at other facets of defense. He was primarily once known for his POA defense, and now it's quite literally cooked to the point where, if we're being honest, he's a defensive liability now. But here's the reality. Klay leaving the Warriors will hurt their offense despite his inconsistencies. Why? Because Klay Thompson is the one player in the league who operates off-ball screens more than any other player in the league, and is one of the best at it too, especially if you have the ability to draw 2 on the ball without actually having the ball in your hands. Steve Kerr's offensive philosophies revolves around motion basketball. There's a ton of player and ball movement with little pick and roll usage, and his playbook is designed towards a system where Klay, who is a movement shooter, can thrive off of half-court sets that involve staggers, pin downs, pin-ins, exit screens, etc. The point is, the offense is always flowing from side to side. Not having that movement shooting presence for the Warriors is going to put a lot of pressure on Steph offensively, as he's likely going to face harder coverages where defenses are going to heavily force the ball out of his hands. It's going to negatively impact the Warriors bigs because their defender can just camp in the paint because there's not enough shooting threats out in the perimeter. On top of that, it's going to be very hard to find a replacement for him. There are not too many shooters in the league like Klay Thompson. There are players that are good good catch and shoot guys, but movement shooters are hard to search. And who can do it at an elite level where they can produce with that ability against great teams in the postseason? Currently, we are close to finalizing a deal to bring a player that is competent of filling Klay's role, but even with his capabilities, it's uncertain whether or not he can do it at a high level. Overall, it seemed like Klay was not happy with the Warriors for quite a while now. Before free agency started, there was a ton of reports regarding the Warriors not offering Klay any offers. They were prepared to lose Klay, and apparently, they rejected Klay's offer of 2 years, $40 million. And here's the thing, because there's been a ton of questions about whether or not Klay Thompson was wronged by the Warriors, the truth is, Klay got injured for 2 consecutive seasons and got paid during his rehab. He got extended, and once he came back, although he did contribute to winning the chip in 22, it was clear that his value was no longer the same. Like, yes, he contributed, but other guys contributed more than him. He never stood out or had a great series in the 22 playoffs. The following season, he was very inconsistent and was close to being unplayable to start the season. He picked it up in the middle of the season, only to then shoot the Warriors out of the playoffs. Fast forward to last season, and I mean, you know what, bro? The less said about it, the better. Everybody has already said it enough, I'm not going to say it. But going back to the point, he was hardly ever a reliable second option for the Warriors. Wiggins was the second option in 22, it was shifting between him and Jordan Poole in 23, and last season it was shifting between him and Jonathan Kuminga. There were conversations about Klay taking a pay cut, and that seemed reasonable for how he was playing. There were many reports that stated that Klay was desperately wanting to stay with the Warriors, and he was willing to do whatever it takes. Now, it is weird that the Warriors not accepting Klay's proposal is a little weird, considering it's definitely possible for us to retain him for the amount that he wanted. But I guess the front office had different priorities. I guess they wanted to play the long game, they wanted to explore the market before locking down Klay, and it's a shame because Klay wanted to stay, but I guess the Warriors front office didn't feel enough urgency to re-sign Klay and keep him on the roster. I, as a fan, wanted to keep Klay because the option for him to compete in a reduced role was present. He compared himself to Ray Allen and said it was a normal thing to do. He himself said that he was open to that, but sadly, I guess at this point, all good things must come to an end. So was Klay wronged by the Warriors? For the most part, no, but in the sense of the Warriors not prioritizing Klay first, you can say yes. So now he has signed a 3-year $50 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks to play with Luka and Kyrie. It is also reported that he had bigger offers, but he declined them because he felt like he can win a championship in Dallas. And folks were saying that 50 M's in Dallas is completely different than 40 M's in Cali, and they're not wrong. So in this sense, it made it look like Klay was chasing the bag, and this will likely make his departure be concluded as a disagreement between him and the front office. But at the same time, as a fan, I can't help but to think that it's also because Klay felt disrespected by the Warrior fans and the Bay Area media. Like, I'm not going to lie, especially this season, everyone was on Klay's head, and I ain't gonna cap as well, I was too. I remember when he fouled Russell Westbrook on Valentine's Day when we was down 3 in a game where we let the Clippers put up 40 in the 4th quarter. Fans were calling for him to be traded, they were saying he has CTE, Bay Area media was starting to become impatient. There was a moment where fans were booing in one of the games in January where we got blown out, and that usually doesn't happen. Dub Nation doesn't normally boo the Warriors. And after the game, the media asked Steph and Klay about their thoughts about the booing. Steph and Klay had 2 completely different responses. Steph took accountability where he acknowledges that the team is not playing their best basketball, whereas Klay didn't seem to care at all, and that was the start of him slowly disconnecting from the franchise. But going back to the deal, I mean, we also let Klay walk away for a bag of chips and a pair of socks. Couldn't even get Maxi Kleber or Josh Green. Either way, as a longtime Warriors fan, I'll always be grateful for Klay's contributions to this franchise, and I wish him the best of luck in Dallas. So since all of this has unfolded, Mike Dunleavy Jr. has made some pretty good moves, and he's having a pretty good offseason performance for the Warriors to help improve the roster. We were able to sign Kyle Anderson on a 3-year $27 million deal, and I love this move. Kyle Anderson was a part of last year's best defensive team, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and he's very much going to be in the same role as Looney, where he's going to clean the game up for the Warriors. He's going to take care of the dirty work by setting good screens and crashing the glass, something that is very important in the Warriors' offensive system. And the Warriors last season were the best rebounding team, despite the size disparity that we have with the rest of the league. So that just shows you that rebounding is a personnel thing with the Warriors. And with Kyle Anderson's size, he should be able to snag a lot of boards for us. However, his value extends beyond that due to his ability ability to score and make decisions out of the pick and roll. On top of that, he's a good post defender. Aside from Anthony Davis, I thought Kyle Anderson played the best defense on Jokic in the playoffs. His POA defense is solid in case he gets switched onto a smaller guard out in the perimeter. Overall, I am excited for Kyle Anderson to play his role and impact the Warriors on both ends of the floor. We also signed DeAnthony Melton for a 1-year $12.8 million deal, and at first I was 50-50 on the signing, and the reasoning for that is because he didn't fit the description of replacing Klay as the starting 2 guard. Not a great enough shooter to play alongside Steph and be effective in the Warriors offense. However, looking back at it now, I actually like this move for a few reasons. Melton is a good perimeter defender when he's healthy. He was at his best defensively when he was on the Grizzlies. Very good shot blocking guard, and if you remember correctly, he matched up with Steph a few times in the 22 playoffs and played very good defense. He was able to block a lot of Steph's layups, and he also had a 99.2 defensive rating in the 22 playoffs, being matched up with Ant and Steph, which is impressive. On top of that, he can contribute offensively with 11.2 points per game. That's a lot better than our second best POA defender in GP2, but if he comes off the bench, he'll provide a big spark with a ton of balance on both ends of the floor. If Kerr decides to use him and use him right, he can be very impactful. We were able to acquire Buddy Hield in a sign and trade, and this is the best move that they've made thus far to patch up the Warriors offense. Earlier I mentioned that Hield is not the best movement shooter, but he's capable of the job. Like, he's not the best, like that's not his specialty, but he's good enough to play the role for a team. He's generally always lurking at the top when it comes to 3-point stats. He's one of the leaders in 3-pointers made in the last 5 seasons. A very good catch and shoot player. Movement shooting though is going to be a bit of a task, but again, if there's anybody that's going to fill Klay's role on the team, it's going to be him. Generally speaking, Buddy Hield is a shooter that does his job very well, but these are the questions that I have. Can he do it to the level that Klay has done it against elite teams is the question. On top of that, if Buddy Hield is the starting 2 guard, how good will his defense be? It'll be interesting to see who Kerr chooses to be the starting 2 guard, but based off of his coaching decisions in the past, I don't know why I'm led to believe that he'll start Buddy Hield over Melton, Pods, and Moody. This move is considered the best so far offensively, but I still have a ton of questions about it. Hopefully Buddy Hield can adjust because he will be a very important factor for the offense. Let's speak a little bit about the draft picks that Mike Dunleavy Jr. has made. Quinton Post with the 52nd overall pick. From the scouting reports that I've read and analyzed, it seems like Post resembles a lot like Nemanja Bjelica. His strengths revolve around his ability to become a pick and pop threat and space the floor. He's not a vertical spacer and very much relies on his touch around the basket like floaters. The difference in him is that his face-up game is pretty solid, where he can pass, score, and make plays. His passing ability is praised out of the post and short rolls. He's 7 feet with a 7'2" wingspan, so finally some size for the Warrior fans that were desperately begging for it. He's a solid rim protector, and I mean, how can you not be with his size? But statistically speaking, he's a 4-man, and TJD is a better shot blocker than Post. But Post is taller, and he resembles the size of a 5-man, but his playstyle translates to a 4-man. Meanwhile, it's vice versa for TJD, so I don't know how it's going to work with that. But Post is not a great perimeter defender because of his lateral quickness deficiency and is generally not a post-up threat. But overall, with this description, this is an archetype that Steve Kerr can work with. He did it with Bjelica. He had him running DHOs, setting high screens, popping to the 3-point line, and playing out of the short roll. He stuck him to everything that he's supposed to do, and I don't see him doing any different with Quinton Post. Post is 24 years old, so another draft pick where Dunleavy Jr. drafts another older player, and teams generally don't draft older players because they believe that their ceiling for improvement is closed. But Dunleavy Jr. has done a great job as a GM scouting young talent, nailing last year's draft picks. And he also explained that his intentions is to not draft older players, but rather to draft good players regardless of their age. And I love it. I think it's great. As long as they can fit in and do their job, it shouldn't be a problem. Reese Beekman is also another older player that we were able to acquire in a 2-way deal out of Virginia Tech, and he is a great POA guard with a 6'7" wingspan as a 6'2" guard. His defensive ratings are disgusting. They're all under 100, which is very impressive. GP2 and Melton haven't been the healthiest players in the past, and if they go down, Beekman will be a good replacement. Good presence as a distributor with his ability to play out of the pick and roll. His assist to turnover ratio numbers are good. He's athletic, can run the floor, and can definitely do some damage out in transition. From everything that I've seen, he can probably overtake GP2 as our secondary POA defender behind Wiggs, if given an opportunity by Steve Kerr. So to summarize everything, the Warriors have done a pretty good job cleaning up the roster after Klay's departure, but they are one trade away from being in playoff contention. There is a man that they are trying to acquire that they are desperately needing, and and this player will certainly fit into the Warriors system, and that man is Lauri Markkanen. Consistent 20 plus per game scorer who can score from any area on the floor while being a movement shooter. Just what the Warriors need. They receive spacing, a bit of shot creation, and size. But the reality is that it's going to take a big swing for us to acquire this man. It's going to take a trade package that will likely include Jonathan Kuminga, Andrew Wiggins, and Moses Moody, and pretty much all of our remaining draft picks. So pretty much it's going to take the kitchen sink to pull this off. But man, would he be a great player for our team though. We would have a legitimate shot at a top 6 seed and competing for a championship if this happens. But only one can dream and pray for this moment to happen, so I'm really hoping that it does happen, but if I'm being honest, on paper it's very unlikely.